engine!
Hey everybody, Yankee here. Recently when I bought my new Mustang S650, because I needed a car quickly and availability was limited around here, I ended up with a car without a performance pack. Now this isn't the worst thing in the world because most of the things in the performance pack, I'm just not a in tune enough driver to actually notice the difference, things like differentials, etc. But one thing I did like about the performance pack is that extra stiffness in the front end afforded by the cross tower brace and by the full cowl brace, the full metal cowl brace. Now, luckily, this is something that's easy to add on afterwards. So I went online and from American Muscle, I ordered one of the SR Performance tubular strut tower braces. I actually like the looks of this better than the stock performance one from Ford. And it connects at 4 points on both ends instead of 2, so maybe it's even better. And also, luckily, I was able to find one of the cowl braces, the full metal cowl brace, or K-brace as it's called in some places. I think of a K-brace as being something different, but it's sometimes called that. I'll call it a cowl brace for this video because that's what I've always called it. But like I said, I found it at a junkyard for $25. So not only is this going to be an easy upgrade for my car, it's going to be a cheap one. It's only going to cost around $124 to actually add this on instead of the, what, $5,000 it is for the performance pack, which most of which would have been way over my head and I would have never even noticed. Now, the tools you're going to need are very simple, and there's very few of them. You're going to need a socket wrench. You're going to need 3 different sockets, possibly an open-ended wrench, a torque wrench, and a pry tool. The socket sizes are going to be 13 millimeter, 15 millimeter, and 17 millimeter. The 13 millimeter and the 15 millimeter are to remove factory nuts and bolts, and the 17 millimeter is to use the bolts that came with the strut tower brace to replace some of the factory nuts. All right, now the first thing we're going to do is take out 3 of these little twist type pop rivets, these little plastic rivets. We're going to take 3 of these out of the plastic or rubber cover that goes over the battery compartment, and then we're going to take that rubber cover completely out of there. And then once this is done, the hardest part of the entire install is next. If you see this little black piece here, and this picture was taken after I'd already done the install of the brace, but I wanted to show you this because this thing is difficult to get off. I fought with this thing. I said a lot of swears, and I think I almost pooped myself just a little bit. May have done it just a little bit. So that right there was the hardest part of the install, I will say, by far. But once you get that off there, it's easy. Then you just remove the battery cable. Now, you don't have to take off the battery cable, but it does make this whole thing easier. If you don't take it off, you're trying to fish things under it, pry things out from under it, just not as easy. Just take it off. Now, once you have the battery cable out of the way, then you're going to go through the cowl itself, not cowl, and you're going to take out all the little pop rivets up here, the little plastic pop rivets. You're just going to go across the entire thing, take all those little round pop rivets out of there so that you can just lift this up. You're not taking it out, you're just going to lift it up so you can get to some bolts under it. And like I said, the reason you're going to lift that up is so you can get to the 4 bolts that holds the little plastic cowl brace in there. And I don't know what this thing's supposed to do because it's just a flimsy little piece of plastic. On the performance packs, it's solid metal, so that's what we're replacing it with. But like I said, there's 4 bolts along the top of it that you have to take out. And that's when you have to get under this piece you just took the pop rivets out of. And that's when you might want your little open end wrench to get in there and get to those bolts, because getting your ratchet in there isn't easy. Now, once you have the 4 bolts across the top of it taken out, you're going to take off the 2 nuts that hold it to the strut tower. There's 2 painted bolts here that it's attached to. Just take the nuts off of it. I've already taken one of the other nuts off in this picture, and you're going to take both of those off later, but you don't have to worry about that at this point. And once you have those 2 off, after taking out the other 4, it should pop right off. And like I said, flimsy little piece of plastic. Now that you have that out of the way, you just put the new piece, or in my case, your junkyard find piece, back in its place. And the difference between this and the one you just took out is it's going to go all the way across to the other strut tower, and it's going to go over those two posts. There's no bolts on them right now because nothing was on them on my car, but you're just going to drop it in place, and then you're going to put the nuts on top of that later once you put the brace on. But for now, you just drop it over those bolts. Now that you've got it dropped into place, you just go on both sides and you take the two closest nuts to the brace right there and you take them off, because the strut tower brace that I bought is going to use all 4 of those posts instead of just 2. You're going to do that on both sides. Once those nuts are off, since the cowl brace doesn't cover these, but this new strut tower brace does, you're going to put these little spacers on the 2 bolts that do not have the cowl brace on them. 2 on both sides. Now, if you weren't installing the cowl brace as well, you'd have to use 6 of these, because you'd have to put 2 on the side that has the plastic brace and then 4 on the other side. They give you 6, but in this case, you're only going to use 4. Now it's time to just put the strut tower brace on. So you just pick it up and you lift it into place. And then you start to panic because the holes don't line up. And you start cursing like, what's this piece of junk they sold me? They said it goes with the 2025 car. It obviously doesn't. The holes don't line up at all. They don't even come close. And then as you're ranting, you realize you're putting it in backwards. So you turn it around and then it fits perfectly. And now all you got to do is button things up. Now, one thing you do have to remember, though, when you're putting the tower brace back on, when you're putting the nuts on the tower brace, you're using the ones that are supplied with that tower brace. So make sure you pay attention that they're 2 different sizes. There's 1.5s that go on the parts where the actual cowl brace is, where it's both strut tower brace and cowl brace. That gets the bigger bolts, the 1.5s. The 1.25s go on the other 2, the shorter bolts. Just make sure you get those on the right ones, or you might cross thread your bolts, and you don't want that to happen. Now, this is where you might say, why don't you just reuse the factory hardware? Well, there's actually not enough of it, because you got more nuts that you got to put back than you took off. That's one reason. And the other reason is the ones that come with the actual brace seem like they're better nuts, so I'm going to use them. So you just go about, like I said, reversing everything you just did. You put all the bolts back into the cowl brace, you put all the nuts back on the strut tower brace, and you just hand tighten everything down. Then once you have those nuts on there and hand tightened, well, then you go through and you torque them down to 35 pounds. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's more than enough to get the job done. So 35 pounds is the recommended torque for these nuts. Then when you're done with that, you just put back all the little pop rivets. You put them back in the cowl, and then you put the battery cable back on and put the cover back on the battery. Now this is where the longest part of the installation is, where this is going to take you more time than everything else. This, if you're like me, is where you drop one of the 3 twist type little plastic pop rivets that goes into the cover on the battery compartment. You drop it into the engine, and then you search and you search and you search and you can't find it. And you don't have one that's the same size at home. So you get in your car and you drive down to the Washougal hardware store and you get 3 that actually match, and you put those back in and you actually put the battery cover back on. The only bad thing is when you get back from the hardware store doing that, as soon as you get out of your car in your driveway, you find the pop rivet that you dropped. So you didn't need to do any of that at all. It probably fell out when you backed up to go to the hardware store. So you have a little fit about that, but then you're pretty much done, and it actually looks great. Now all you got to do is take it for a test drive. So I took it out on the roads by my house, where I drive every time I leave my house, which isn't very often, but when I do, these are the roads I'm on. Now, it usually isn't this busy, but the motocross races are going on right now near my house, so there's a lot of traffic. But still, I was able to take it out, take some corners, accelerate, do some turns, and it felt so much better. Now, I'm not sure how I would describe it. I'm not really big with terms and stuff, but it just felt more planted. It felt like it was stuck to the road a little better. It was a little more rigid, and it felt like I was in better control of what was going on. It just felt more stable. And that's the feeling I was going for. So I'm very happy. Glad I did this. Like I said, it only cost $124. And I think it made a big difference. And not just that, but when you pop that hood, it looks so much better.